With a 35-30 win in Pittsburgh, Dallas moves to number 1 in all notable NFL power rankings. The Dallas Cowboys boast the best record, 8-1 in the league. Last week we went over the biggest threats to the New England Patriots, and now it's time we give Dallas that same respect.
Well, let me start off by saying this week it's great to be a Cowboys fan. We're sitting here on top of the world at 8-1. We have the 2 best quarterbacks on our roster in the entire NFC East. I mean, things are grand. We got the MVP, Ezekiel Elliott. We got Rookie of the Year, Dak Prescott. And you're asking me who the biggest threat is.
Yes.
Oh, I love answering this question.
Mm-hmm.
And the truth is, there's only one team that strikes a fear in me, and that's the Seattle Seahawks. They weren't looking too good earlier in the year. I saw that game against the Arizona Cardinals where the offense was non-existent. I seen a lot of injuries go down on defense. Cam Chancellor wasn't playing for quite a few games. They still have Michael Bennett out, but he should be returning soon. So if that defense gets to full strength, and most of all, Russell Wilson looked like he's back to full strength. And if somehow, some way, they can keep compiling these wins and Dallas slips up once or twice, man, if Seattle gets that home field advantage, it's going to be tough to go up there and win in the NFC Championship game. And to me, that's the only threat in the NFC.
Oh, this is horrible. I mean, I've got Dallas winning, and I've got Seattle winning. It's just, I mean, you get stomped out like this if you're a Niners fan. Alcohol is being consumed at a heavy amount if you're a 49er fan at this point.
And if you're a Cowboys fan, too.
Out of joy, I'm assuming for you. And I think that you're right. I think Seattle is the biggest threat. And here's the thing, and bear with me because I'm going to give you a saying. Is if you're going to get into a gunfight, you want to have the biggest gun and you want to shoot first because that sends the message.
Right.
Okay. When I look at Dallas and I look at Seattle and I line them up, I mean, to me on paper and what you see if both teams move up, Seattle should win because Seattle, I think, has the better head coach. I think at this point, Seattle has the better quarterback.
I think they outlawed cheating, dude. So I don't know if we can say Pete Carroll's.
I don't know.
I don't think they can. Seattle can pay the players like he was paying them in USC. So it might be a little bit of a problem.
Well,
just saying.
As long as the refs aren't holding on his defensive players, apparently it's all good. Yeah, Julio Jones that one.
Yeah,
but they boast a better quarterback, and I'm not saying Dak isn't great because I think Dak's amazing. I just think Russell Wilson is kind of, due to his experience in levels, winning a Super Bowl is ahead of him. They boast a better defense. I know Dallas' defense is underrated. You quoted me the stats, and I agree. I just think talent-wise and scheme-wise, Seattle's a better defense. Now, that being said, the biggest gun and between these two teams is the Dallas running game. So you may not have the better coach. You may not have the better quarterback, but you have... Can that one thing you have that is superior to them by leaps and bounds? I think Pete Carroll is a better coach than Jason Garrett. And I think that Dak Prescott is not Russell Wilson. But they're not huge gaps. The ability for the Dallas Cowboys to run the ball, whether in Seattle or Dallas, is the biggest thing. That's the most important thing in football for a team to win.
Right.
I mean, I put the Dallas offensive line, I should correct myself, the Dallas running game. Because... we know that offensive line is probably the best in 10 years.
Alfred Morris is no slouch.
And it's not just that, is that you looked last year. Last year you had Darren McFadden. He did good. But you put a great running back like Ezekiel Elliott in that offense, and it's beyond great. So that running game is probably the most important. It's the biggest threat. It is the most important object in that field.
Right.
So can they use that to overcome what deficiencies I feel they have on the defense compared to Seattle at quarterback and at coaching?
Yeah, Seattle's definitely better across the board on defense than Dallas this year. But on offense, I think Dallas is significantly better than they are. We're better at running back. We're better all along that offensive line. We are way better all along that offensive line. I think quarterback is comparable, but I'll give the edge to Russell Wilson just because we're talking about the playoffs here, and he has playoff experience where Dak doesn't.
Yeah,
and that's the biggest.
He's a Super Bowl champion.
Yeah, so I can't. I'm never gonna take credit away from somebody that's won the chip. But other than that, even the wide receivers we're much deeper, and they're bigger playmakers than the playmakers that they have in Seattle.
I think that I agree with you there. I think Jimmy Graham is starting to come into his own. I think he's getting better. No, I don't think he's Jason Witten, but I don't think he has to be Jason Witten in this offense. But I think that you're finally starting to see with him why they traded for him. He's starting to get acclimated, you know? And so I just look at it as the biggest weapon is the Dallas offensive line. Can that neutralize all the other advantages Seattle has? Now, I think it's 50-50. It'd be interesting.
Have you ever seen Varsity Blues?
Of course I have.
You know what Coach Kilmer says, right?
What's he say?
He says the number one thing in football is controlling the clock, and that's what Dallas does.
That's true. Now, I have a sleeper team. I was thinking Philly, but I said no because we're talking about playoffs, right?
Yeah,
and
playoffs.
I don't think that Carson Wentz can go into Dallas in the playoffs and win. But I have a team here that if they're a wild card team, they can go into Dallas. That if they were to play Dallas Cowboy fans like, oh, we're going to smash them. But they'd be a little nervous because this team has a quarterback who's gone into Dallas in the playoffs, beaten Dallas in the playoffs. It's the man who ended an undefeated streak. It's the man that doesn't matter how weak that team is, how devoid of talent that team looks. There's just something about Eli Manning and the New York Giants that if they get in there and it's just like they have no business beating you guys, and then they walk away with the 27-23 win because Eli threw a ridiculous touchdown at the last second.
Listen, I got to admit, Eli Manning in the playoffs does strike a tiny bit of fear. And that's only because he knows this Dallas Cowboys team in and out. He's fought the gunfight battles with Tony Romo. Now he's got to fight him with Dak Prescott. The only thing that he's never fought is an offense like the Dallas Cowboys have in this season, which is Ezekiel Elliott, who, come on, this guy's a rookie, and he's probably going to hit 2,000 yards. Another thing is our defense on the secondary is new and improved. And if we get Mo Claiborne back for the playoffs and we get Barry Church back for the playoffs, it's going to be a different story. Eli loves to throw the pick. You know it, and I know it. He's led the league in interceptions 3 separate seasons, and he threw 2 picks last night.
Yeah,
he's not a foreigner to interceptions.
No.
And if we can make him pay, and if he has to come up into AT&T Stadium, I don't see how Eli can get the job done. Not with the current roster. Remember, when he went into Dallas and beat that number 1 seeded Dallas Cowboys team, what did he have with them? One of the greatest front 7 I've ever seen.
Yeah.
Stacked.
I know. I agree with you. But there have been other times where he's gone in there and he's beaten Dallas teams. Maybe not in the playoffs. He beat them this year.
I'm surprised you're not saying week 1.
Yeah, week 1 they went in there. And I think both teams are better than they were in week 1. I think maybe Dallas is even better than they were in week 1 than the Giants. They've made a bigger leap. But, man, in the playoffs, like I said, Cowboy fans are going to look at the Giants like, we're just going to run the ball all over them. And I remember flashing back to that time where
Marion Barber ran the ball all over them in the 2007 playoff game, and we still lost.
Yes.
I didn't get that. He had like 200 yards or something like that.
Didn't you sweep them that year?
We did. We beat them twice in the regular season.
Yeah, and they just and I picked the Giants because they're a divisional rival. They know you guys well. Yeah. They do, and they have a quarterback that once you beat the 2008 Patriots, to me, you can almost do anything. I give you a fighting chance to beat anybody. He's got Odell. He's got Shepard. Their defense is starting to turn into form. If they can slow down, they're not going to slow down Ezekiel. Okay, let me get that away. But if they can force Dallas to throw and they can put pressure, can they get him in the playoffs? It'd be a playoff game for Dak Prescott, first playoff game. The pressure will mount by then, and then you wonder also on top of that, another scenario is if he starts to play poorly, do you go to Romo? If he goes in there and he's not throwing interceptions, but he's not completing passes or he's getting pass rushed, and then that creeps into his head.
Look, when I take a look at that Philadelphia game, that's the evidence that you need that you cannot pull Dak Prescott because he played 3 bad quarters in that game, but he turned it around. He showed the mental toughness. He showed that poise, and he drove down the field and won the game. And you can't pull him because you know he's capable of doing just that.
Yeah, he went down the field against the Steelers. It's an interesting topic, and I said they're a threat, and they'd be a small threat, and they'd be my sleeper threat.
Very small threat.
Yes, but they'd be a threat to knock off the Dallas Cowboys in the playoffs.
Super Bowl or bust.